Good evening and welcome to the lounge. In this video, we're going to turn our higher or lower game into a new game called hotter or colder. So what we're going to do is go into the bottom left, right click on our start menu, click open Windows Explorer. I'm going to click on your H drive or wherever you saved your higher or lower game. Mine is right here. I'm going to right click on it, click copy, right click again, click paste, find the copy, right click and rename it to not higher or lower game, hotter or colder game. Okay. Once you do that, double click on it to open it up. And I might have to reset my workspace so that it actually shows up. There we go. So what we're going to be doing to this is we're going to change how the game functions. Instead of telling our player if they need to guess higher or lower, we're going to tell them if they guessed closer, which would mean they were hotter, or if they guessed further away, which would mean they were colder. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to add on a little bit of animation to make this just a little bit fancier and a little more entertaining, at least visually. Okay? So first order of business is to open up our actions window. And we're going to need two variables. One that will keep track of how close their last guess was, and one that'll keep track of how close they just guessed. Okay, so say keep track of how close last guess was, and we'll call this var. How close last. Say it's type integer, and just like our high score, we're going to set it equal to int.maxValue, because what's the furthest they could possibly guess away? Pretty much this number, okay? Because there's not going to be anything in their last guess when they start. All right. The next variable we need is going to keep track of how close current guess was. All right. We'll call this one var how close current. Say it's an integer. And to start, we can just set it to something really big as well. All right. So once we have these two variables, we can scroll on down to our submit input function. And if they enter a guess, we're going to go inside here. If they guess correctly, we're going to tell them they guessed correct. But if they didn't guess correctly, we want to tell them hotter or colder. Okay? So instead of checking for higher or lower, we're going to end up replacing this. So let's do that right now. So if they submit and they are wrong, we want to see how close they were, right? So we're going to say how close current, because this is their current guess, is equal to, well, what is the actual number? And then what did they guess? Well, they guessed txt input.text, but remember, we can't actually take text and subtract it from a number, right? So we need to convert our text to an integer. So we just say int and then surround it in parentheses and end our line. But how close current? Well, do we care if the number was smaller or bigger? No, we just want to know how far away. So right now, if our number is higher than what they guessed, we're going to get a positive number. But if our number is lower than what they guessed, we'll get a negative number. And we don't care about positive or negative, we just want the distance. So we're going to surround this whole piece of code here in what's called absolute value. So it's math.abs. And if you don't know what absolute value is, basically it doesn't care about positive or negative, it just gives you the number. So if I put -1 into absolute value, it's going to return 1. And if I put in 1 into absolute value, it's still going to return 1. Okay? So how close their current guess is, well, we're going to get it right here. So let's say get how close current guess is. Okay? So instead of checking to see if the guess was higher, we're going to check to see if their current guess was closer than their last guess. Okay, so what we're going to do is say if how close current is less than how close last, right? Because that means their guess, the distance was smaller, which makes it closer. We want to say txt feedback dot text equals, what do we want to say if they're closer? we want to say hotter, right? Let's put a comment here. So if guess was closer, else if, we want to check to see if how close their current guess was further away, so greater than how close last. And we're going to say txt feedback dot text equals colder. So if they're further away, they are colder. What if they're the same distance away? Well, that'll be handled by else. So then we're just going to put txt feedback dot text. Let's just say neutral. Okay. So let's get rid of this old code from guessing higher or lower. I'm just going to press delete and clean this up so it's nice and pretty. And this saved. There we go. And now we want to test this out. Well, how do we test this out? Well, let's do a little bit of cheating. Okay. So right underneath our number, we're going to trace out what that number is when we press reset. Remember, this is in the reset game function. So now if we run and we click reset, it can tell us our number, which is 46. So my first guess, I put the number 1. It should say hotter because I never had a guess before, right? If I put in the number 2, it should still say hotter because 2 is closer than 1. If I put in 1 now, is 1 closer than 2 to the number 46? No, right? So it should say colder. And if I put the number 1 in again, it should say neutral. Okay? So if I guess 47, I'm hotter. If I guess 46, I'm correct. Okay? Cool. And if we reset, well, does this actually work? If I start a guess, let's say our new number is 40. If I say 41 and press submit, neutral, that's not right. What did we not do? We never reset their last guess when we reset the game. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to go under our actions, and let's go back to the top here. Remember this line where we reset, or where we initialized, I guess. We set our first value for how close last. We need to reset this, okay? So I'm going to copy this and move this down all the way to the bottom. And instead of tracing out the number, I'm just going to paste this. And remember, we don't need this part here because we've already created our variable. So we want to reset last guess. We might as well reset the current one as well. So let's copy all of this stuff, make a new line. We'll say reset current guess, how close last. Oops, not last. I just duh. How close current. Okay, so now that way everything is nice and reset. Whenever you have a reset button, you have to make sure you reset every single part of your game that you don't want to carry over into the new game, right? So now that we have this nice and functioning, let's add in some animation, just something that kind of flashes so that the user sees more than just words that they were hotter or colder, okay? So let's go into our timeline, and we're going to need a new layer. So underneath our buttons layer, we want to call this background. All right. And in our background to start, make sure you have everything else locked. Going to take my rectangle tool, make sure I have no stroke. I'm going to set my fill color to, what do you want to start it as? Let's just make it black for now so that we can see what's going on. And make sure we don't have any rounded corners over here. So once you have that, just click and drag anywhere you want. And actually, we can hide all of our other layers. So let's do that. So there we go. All we have is our background layer and this square going on here. So first order of business is I'm going to use my selection tool to select it. I'm going to use my align panel. Click align to stage. We want to match the size of our stage, and then we want to center it. So now we have a black background. So all I'm going to do now is tap F8 to turn this into a movie clip. So the type is going to be movie clip. And instead of symbol 1, we're going to call this background. Click Okay. And now let's double click on it to go inside. So what are we going to do here? So we have hotter, colder, and neutral. Okay, so when it's hotter, we want to flash red. When it's colder, we want to flash blue. And when it's neutral, we want to flash, I don't know, let's say gray. Okay? So to start, well, what do we need on layer 1? We just need a plain white background. So let's make this plain white. Okay? And then let's handle hotter. Okay, so on frame 2, I'm going to click Insert Keyframe, which will copy frame 1. So we still just have this blank white rectangle. Okay, and I said we're going to do hotter, right? I think I said that. So let's turn this rectangle, rectangle, into a gradient. Okay, a linear gradient. And we're going to use our gradient transform tool to turn this into, once you have it selected, go to our color palette, and we don't want from white to black, we want a dark red. So let's say we want a red to a dark red. Okay, something like that. So now we're going to rotate this gradient here. You might have to hold shift to get it to snap so that it goes up and down. And we're just going to drag this up a little bit so that way it lines up perfectly and it's nice and pretty. So this will be for when we do hotter. And how long do we want this to last, this animation? Because we're just going to fade it out back into white. So let's say, let's count the frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, about 9 frames. So let's click on frame 11 here. Right click, click Insert Keyframe. So it'll give us a copy of it. And now on this, if you go to our Gradient Transform tool, select it, we're going to make it completely white with our color palette. Okay? So white, white. And now if we create a shape tween between these objects here, it should change the colors out for us. So now it's fading back to white. So from here, it's fading from red to white. Cool. So let's click shift, okay? Or sorry, left click on frame 11. We're going to shift click on frame 2. Oops. Or maybe click on frame 2 first and then shift click. Shift and click. Shift and click eventually will work so that you can select all these frames here. Okay? I'm going to right click, click copy frames, and I'm going to right click over here on frame 12 and click paste frames. Okay? So now on frame 12, we just have this animation repeating again. On frame 12, we would like to do colder. Okay? So what we're going to do here is with frame 12 selected, we're going to use our gradient transform tool and just click on our red square, go under the color palette, and we're going to turn it from, say, a light blue to a dark blue. Something like that. Okay, so now it'll fade from white to that. So we have blank white, then from red fading out to white, and then blue fading out to white. Well, now let's do one with gray. Okay, so let's select this right here, hold down shift and click so we get all of them. Right click, copy the frames. We're going to paste them on what is frame 22 right here. Okay, so I'm going to click paste frames. And now if we click on frame 22, go to our gradient transform tool. We just want to change this from, let's see, a very light gray to a darker gray. Okay, so now here, this will fade out to the appropriate colors, right? Cool, and if we drag through, it looks pretty cool, right? So let's save that. And we need a new layer in our background movie clip, okay? We need something to, if we leave it how it is, right, and we run, what do you think is going to happen? This animation is going to play forever. We're going to give someone epilepsy or a seizure if they have epilepsy, right? So that looks pretty cool, but that's not the effect we're going for, right? So let's exit out of this. Double click on your background. It's going to look like it's not there because it matches the background of the stage, but we just want to double click on it, and we need a new layer. Okay, this layer is going to hold our actions. And if you remember in our die video, we use something called stop. We're going to do that here too. So on frame 1 of our actions, we just want to type in stop, open close parentheses, semicolon, okay? And that is in the API under movie clips. We have all these extra frames here, so let's just remove them. And now if we run our program, our background should stay white. Good. Perfect. So what frame is hotter on? Well, hotter starts on frame 2. Okay, so what we're going to do is whenever the guest needs to be hotter, we're going to send our background movie clip to play frame 2. Okay, so let's go back. And first of all, we need to give our background an instance name. Okay, so I'm on my main stage, clicking on my background, instance name. Well, it's movie clip, so I'll say MC and then BG for background. Okay, press enter. Now if we go into our actions on our main stage, and we do the hokey pokey, now when we say hotter, let's take our background, so MCBG dot, we're going to say go to and play, just like that. Okay? If you don't remember what this looks like, look up movie clip on the API. Okay, so we're going to say go to and play frame 2 of our background movie clip. Okay, so let's just say play frame 2 of our BG movie clip. Okay, so let's run this now. And if we get something that says hotter, it should play the hotter part, right? So if I press 1, press submit, well, it goes to the hotter, but then it keeps going through all of our other things. So what do you think we have to do? We need to put another stop on our background. Okay, so click on your background, double click to go inside of it. And on frame, not frame 2, we want on frame 11, where it turns white, we want it to stop again. Okay, so I'm going to say insert keyframe, right? And in our actions, we have a new set of actions on frame 11, and we're just going to say stop. Okay, so the way this is going to work, everywhere we have a keyframe and some kind of actions, that's when it's going to get executed. Okay, so on frame 1, we're going to do a stop, and on frame 11, we're going to do a stop. And let's just go ahead and take care of some other things while we're here. We also want to stop on frame 21 when it's white after we get done with our colder. So let's just say insert keyframe. Okay, go into actions, type in stop. And we also want that to work on frame 31. So let's do the same thing. Click on frame 31, insert keyframe, go under actions, and click stop. Okay, so now we should have a stopping action at the beginning and after every time we play one of these fancy movie clips. Or we play on one of these fancy moving backgrounds, okay? Or animated backgrounds. So I'm going to run now. We've only handled hotter, but let's make sure it just does hotter, and then that's it. So I'm going to say 5, submit, hotter. Boom, it stops. Beautiful. Okay, so let's find out what frames our colder and our neutral are on. So let's see, on frame 11 we have colder. Sorry, on frame 12 we have colder. And on frame 22, we have neutral, and it says it right here. So 12 and 22. So let's go back to our main stage. Click on Actions, tap F9, and get it to come up. There we go. So now I'm just going to copy this right here. Instead of just saying colder, we want to go to and play frame 12. Okay. And instead of saying just neutral, we want to go ahead and say play frame 22. Okay, so save. And do we still have this trace down here? No, we do not. So let's put back in our cheating method. So we're going to say trace number, and that way we can test to make sure everything works out. And we're going to run. And now it's going to say, well, when we start, submit. Oops, I forgot to reset. So let's reset first so we know what the number is. The number is 76. Okay, so if I guess 1, it should say hotter. If I guess 0, it should say colder. Okay, if I guess 0 again, it should say neutral. There we go. So we have 4, 5, 6, and as long as we get closer, get further away. And then what happens when we actually get it right? 76 says, you got it. The number was 76. Awesome. So now we just have to go back into our reset game, get rid of trace, and there we have it. We have a nice, beautiful game with a little bit of animation that flashes, and we can actually tell whether or not hotter, cold. Man, this game's hard. Can't even talk. 70's further away. What about 60? 60's hotter. 59 hotter. 58. Oh, come on. 55. What? 50. Oh man, I'm nowhere near. I am so bad at this game. 25. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. 20. Colder. 24. Hotter. 23. What? 25. 26. This game's hard. 27. 30 is hotter. What? How on? Colder. Okay, so 26. Colder. 25. Colder. 27. Hotter. 28. Hotter. 29. Hotter. Is it 30? No, what? 31. Oh, man. I am really bad at this game. But there you go. Everything works. I am not good at the hotter or colder game. But yeah. Happy birthday.